Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April 1st meeting of the Development Authority of the City of Alpharetta. Tonight, we have 5 of our 7 with John and Sean unable to make it. So we only have one item that we'll have to worry about for that. But our statement of purpose, the Development Authority of Alpharetta is granted the powers and jurisdiction through the State of Georgia General Assembly and a resolution adopted by the Alpharetta City Council on September 3rd, 1996. The function of this authority is to promote the public good and general welfare, trade, commerce, industry, general tax base, and the employment opportunities available in the city of Alpharetta. So we have just one item on our consent agenda, and that is the approval of the minutes from February 4th. So did anybody have any comments, questions, changes? Would anyone like to make a motion?
He said, I wasn't absent, so I can't.
All right, and we have a second, so those in favor of approving? 5 for 5, so we're good. We have several items on our agenda tonight, one of which is a workshop with Woody, and Woody's running just a little bit late, so we'll do a little flip-flop. Do we have to vote on that?
I believe you can choose to reorder the agenda and then make a motion to finalize that agenda. So if you wanted to move the workshop after your partner updates, you can propose that, and then we can just have a quick vote.
Can we propose that?
I make a proposal to change the workshop behind partner update for tonight's agenda.
Second that motion.
All those in favor? 5, so we're good. All right, so we'll start with Karen, who we haven't seen for quite some time, giving us an update.
If you could hit the green button, or the button, and make sure that it turns green.
Okay.
Got it, great.
All right, is that better? Excellent. So I am here this evening to simply provide an update, since it's been a few months since I had the pleasure of reporting to you all on what's happening with Tech Alpharetta. As you know, we moved into new space last October, followed by our grand opening in that new space in December. We are officially all settled in. The startups are certainly enjoying it as much as all of us and everybody that comes to see us. And we've been keeping quite busy in the space. So I wanted to kind of update you on what's been happening, especially from the incubator side of things, and answer any questions that you all might have about where we're at. Try that again. There we go. So a couple of interesting stats to share here. So we're one of 5 major metro area incubators. I was fairly persistent at ensuring that we got to be well known in the downtown ecosystem as well. And so we are, and we work and collaborate and partner with the other incubators, Atlanta Tech Village, the Russell Center for Innovation, ATDC, Atlanta Tech Park, Curiosity Labs. So we are all partnered and working together, since at the end of the day, our goals are one and the same, to raise up the entire region, to be recognized as a tech hub and a startup hub, and of course, for my end of things, to make sure that Alpharetta is included in those efforts and with that recognition. We currently have, and it's been fairly steady for a number of months, 55 tech startup member companies. They have received, and the ones before them as well, since 2015, since the incubator opened, more than $247 million in investor funding has been received by our startups, which is quite considerable. And despite it being slightly leaner times for getting funding, the best of them are still able to get funded. We have 23 graduates. Our most recent, Synaptrix, is a med device company developing a non-opioid pain relief. It's a medical device. That was a spinoff from Avanos, who is a larger enterprise health-oriented company here in the city of Alpharetta. So they are now in commercial space, headquartered in the city of Alpharetta, and City Council recognized them last fall as well. And we have a number of startups coming up through the ranks. Our largest has 14 people and takes up our 2 largest offices, and they are finalizing the terms of their lease. They will be down in the North Point Mall area, also in the city of Alpharetta. So that's a great success story once again. Tech jobs created. There's 2 ways to look at this, and Charlie and I have been talking about it. Council had questions for me about it. So there is the actual tech jobs created by our graduates. Those are technology jobs. Jobs created in the city of Alpharetta is 294 since the incubator opened. State of Georgia, 450. This does not include the service industry jobs that are created when new tech jobs are created. Those are the indirect jobs creation. The numbers can run anywhere from 3 to 7.5, depending on which economist you consult, but they all agree that there's a jobs multiplier effect from new tech job creation. And so we have settled in the middle, as we have for many years, taken 5 service industry jobs for every new tech job created. And when you count the indirect jobs as well, the numbers are over 1,700 for the city of Alpharetta in terms of new tech and service industry jobs, and over 2,700 for the state of Georgia. But any way you look at it, there's definitely no denying that the startup incubators are jobs creation engines, especially for the cities in which they're located. What we're seeing now, it's fascinating. As new technology develops, we see that immediately reflected in the types of startups that come into our incubator, and also in the way that our startups pivot that are already there. So right now, they're heavily AI-driven. The startups that are at our center that may have been, or our incubator that have been members for a couple of years, even if they didn't start out utilizing AI, they are now, so you can pretty much say they're almost all AI-driven technology companies, and agentic AI, the latest thing on the scene. We saw right at the end of last year, agentic AI startups starting to join up right before that kind of exploded onto the scene as the newest iteration of AI technology. Quick snapshot, just to give you an idea of a couple of the startups that are there today. AlignX is one of the agentic AI companies that ensures that their customers' AI systems are aligned with human values. That they have an office next door to mine in the incubator. Lighthoo's AI is run by Dr. Srijan Kumar. He is a professor at Georgia Tech. He spoke at our speaker series last week on agentic AI. He's basically developed AI agents that can handle procurement for companies in lieu of using people for it. So it saves hours of data entry, creates purchase orders, verifies invoices, and does a lot of that back-end work through the use of AI. PullLogic is one of our companies that successfully raised funds last year and is in the process of a bridge round. They are a supply chain and logistics startup, and they've done very well and gotten some local funding from Atlanta seed stage VC firms as well. So just wanted to give you a little sense, a little sample of who's over there, and you all always have an open invitation to come on in and join us for a meeting where you might meet some of the startups. From the financial side, we have our financials through end of February. We won't have the March and first quarter financials until third week of April. We have an outside CPA firm that handles those for us. But I wanted to give you a little snapshot of where things are at so far this year. So right now we are on track with our projections for this year. Our revenue heavily skews in the first quarter because that's when our sponsorship renewals go out, and then we draw down on it the rest of the year. But with revenues of $263,000 for the first 2 months of the year and expenses of $112,874. We are paying rent now, which is something new to our financials. It's at $58.58 per month. We'll be increasing, according to the lockstep increases in our lease, to $7,030 per month, October of 2026. Any questions so far? Okay, great. And in addition to our efforts at the incubator to grow new companies for the city, we're also continuing our work to grow the tech ecosystem here in Alpharetta. So to date, in 2025, we've hosted 7 events, speaker series events, and startup workshops. The speaker series serve all tech execs in the North Metro area along this corridor. The workshops serve our startups alone. So we've served 251 tech execs to date. We'll be hosting at least 19 more events this year and serving more than 2,000 tech execs in the area in 2025 total. We've also hosted 27 meetups at our incubator this year, serving about 230 startup founders and their supporters. Sending out our usual 2 newsletters a week, one for startups, one for the community, reaching nearly 5,000 tech execs and supporters. One thing I didn't include here is we also post socially every day across Facebook, LinkedIn, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We're on track with board meetings, executive board committee meetings. We launched a leadership workshop for our board in February, partnered with a board company, Rally, and we're going to add leadership workshops for our startups as well. So that's a little snapshot of what else we've been doing so far this year. Wanted to invite you all to join us for our annual Summer Tech Mixer. That's going to take place right here on the green at Never Enough Time. That comes up on June 5th, and you are all welcome to join us. We'd love for you to be there. Let me know if you'd like to attend, and we'll add you to the guest list. We usually attract about 90 to 100 tech execs, plus our sponsors at that event. And then we are working very hard to prepare for our 2 major fundraisers of the year. We do a CIO speed dating every year where we line up 10 CIOs and sell 10 vendor slots to come pitch to them. So that comes up in June. And then we switched it up a little bit this year. We're not hosting a full-fledged golf tournament as a fundraiser. The golf tournaments have just gotten extraordinarily expensive for a full-day tournament. So we have pivoted to hosting a Top Golf Classic. That will also be a fundraiser, an evening event in September, but we're already promoting and selling golf bays and sponsorships for that. So those will be our 2 major fundraisers for the year. And our executive board and board members continue to put their heads together. We're all working to come up with additional potential revenue streams for the incubator, knowing that we do have rent increases coming down the line, and we're going to need to increase the revenue that comes in since we've already maxed it out from a startup standpoint and with the existing fundraisers and events that we do host.
If you take out, the fees that you charge for events, where are you with the rental revenue from the 53? Are you north of 7,000 a month, or like?
Yes, right now we are. The tricky part is, of course, startups especially can be unpredictable. Either they graduate out, some go out of business, or they just need to preserve capital and need to end their sublease. So we have one empty right now because we had a startup that said, we love having this office, but we really have to preserve our capital for 6 months while we have a bridge round of funding raised. And then we have our largest startup. As soon as they graduate, we'll have our 2 largest offices available, one of which we might convert into additional dedicated desks. So it ebbs and flows. If we can keep those 2 largest offices leased, they bring in a great deal of revenue. And those combined with several other offices will cover the cost of the rent at its current level. Other questions? That's where we are for first quarter and going into April. And I just wanted to thank you all for all of your support. Let you know that we have a lot of events going on. You're always welcome at any of them. Just reach out to me. And again, just to be always happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you all for giving me the time.
Thank you very much. And Woody, you've been pushed down a bit. We've reordered, so we've got our next partner update. Is that Morgan that's going to give it to us, or? Yeah. Okay. Karen is giving it.
So we have Karen Richard here, the Vice President of the Alpha Foundation.
Good evening, everyone, Chairman and Development Authority members. I guess I need to speak louder. Yes, okay. My name is Karen Richard, and I am, as Charlotte said, a member of the Alpha Loop Foundation Board. And I was selected to present to you tonight a brief update overview on the Alpha Loop Foundation. Where we've been for the last number of years and where we're going. And I'm thrilled to be here to do that. It's a very exciting time to be associated with the Alpha Loop Foundation. But before I start, I would like to say a thank you to all of the board members here for your service to the city. I certainly appreciate the importance of the Development Authority. As a longtime resident, 20 years, I've had the opportunity to serve 2 tours on the Planning Commission and a term on City Council, so I understand the amount of time it takes for you to spend time dedicated to our city, volunteering your time and being away from your family, and I just wanted to thank you for that. It's much appreciated. So I will start here with a quick update, and bear with me, I'm a little rusty here with my PowerPoint skills. Am I there okay? Okay, so as I mentioned, my objective here is to give you an overview of the foundation, to share some highlights that we experienced in the last couple of years, our progress to date, and so it's showing right. Okay, and I click through. Okay, and our action plan, and then opportunities for you to stay in the loop as far with the Alpha Loop Foundation. So curious about some of the photos that I have included on this slide. Wondering if anyone can tell me, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, where the wayfinding for Pet Spa and the Alpha Loop and bike storage is located. That's currently a sign that's, oh, all right. I forgot to mention. I have an inside scoop here. Morgan Smith is on the Alpha Loop Foundation. So where do we have that currently? The Eden apartment complex, parking garage? Correct, excellent. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the slide, the third slide over on the right, the stamped concrete on the Haynesbridge crosswalk, which just recently was updated with a new paint job, which was a fabulous improvement. Curious if anybody knows where the massive Alpha Loop logo structure is currently located? Brand new. This just was erected last week in the Lakeview development where the Eden is. So this is a structure that is the Alpha Loop logo, probably 18 to 20 feet in height in total. And it's hard to see here, but as you walk up, the Alpha Loop name and foundation and are etched on the logo itself, as well as on the 3 points there. So that is the first of its kind in regards to a public art structure there, and that is located in between where the townhomes are being built and the office development, right in front of the lake there. So that was very exciting. You have to pardon me, my allergies are crazy right now, so I will be sipping water as I go through this. So the Alpha Loop Foundation, the mission is a very singularly focused mission, which for the board members is basically to promote, enhance, and expand the Alpha Loop in any way that we possibly can. Our focus areas have been centered around awareness and fundraising, public art, landscaping improvements, education and programming, and advocacy of commercial and residential development and trail expansion and maintenance. All of the activities that we have been supporting in the last number of years are all focused around those four core areas. And I think an interesting stat you probably know because of your Development Authority folks is that the 4-mile section, when it will be completed, will actually linking neighborhoods to 1,500 jobs in that surrounding area. Within a quarter mile of that 4-mile section are 1,500 job opportunities. I'm sorry, 15,000. Thank you. Dan? Thank you. 15,000. So just a brief background, because I'm not sure when all you folks have joined the Development Authority, but the foundation was formed 4 years ago. John Goss, one of your Development Authority members, along with Mike Schuster and David Belisle and Ray Appin, created the Alpha Loop Foundation, formed a nonprofit, and struck a partnership with the city of Alpharetta, whereas the city would match our funds up to $2 million. That was 4 years ago. Since the forming of the foundation, in the last 2 years, the board has grown significantly. Morgan was added, and I think currently we have 11 board members. So 23 and 24, we spent a lot of time adding board members that were very strong advocates for the Alpharetta community and very interested in helping grow the Alpha Loop Trail. Thank you to the foundation, to the Development Authority, because in December of 22, you all donated $20,000 to the foundation so that we could build and launch the Alpha Loop Foundation website, which we did in September of 23, along with launching our Instagram social media account. And then shortly thereafter, the launching of the website, we kicked off a number of community awareness events throughout the community to increase community awareness and to assist with the fundraising. So we partnered with the Alpharetta Business Association in regards to the farmers market and the Christmas market. We organized a number of, sip and stroll events, partnered with downtown business owners, and organized a number of sip and stroll events in downtown Alpharetta, using the City Hall to Avalon connection. We also worked with the Alpharetta Chamber on a Women's Walk event last year, and we had 2 major fundraising events that were in connection with the opening of the new phase, which is called Phase 3, the Old Milton Parkway to Northwind section. We had a ribbon cutting and big event on June 1st when that particular section was opened. And then we also, in December of '24, did a weekend event, which we called Lights on the Loop. And we lit up the tunnel under West Side Parkway, along with holiday lights and garland and ribbons on the lovely bridge that connects the Chelsea Walk and Haynes Park to the Atlee development. We spent a lot of time kind of gearing up and getting those events out. Between the launch of the website and the end of last year, we held 27 events, and we raised over $56,000 in donations for the Alpha Loop Foundation. And that's a picture of Charlotte, who is a fabulous contributor to the Alpha Loop Foundation. Charlotte is our city liaison with the Economic Development Department and is a instrumental part of keeping our board focused on our activities, and that's a picture from one of our sip and stroll events. Through our community outreach, we received a lot of feedback from folks that are frequent users of the Alpha Loop. We call them Alpha Loopers. Between sip and strolls and the farmers market, a lot of feedback, and we identified that it was typically falling into three main areas. Better mapping tools and wayfinding signage was a very frequent request. Parking needs at Northwinds. The new section that was opened is over a mile long, but there is no designated city parking along that section. And then more public art. Public art has been a huge success. And you can see that the Alpharetta Arts Committee has done a great job on this initial section between City Hall and Avalon, but there is a need and a desire to take that forward and add more art along the newer sections as well. So to address the issues with better mapping tools and wayfinding, we did implement or added an enhancement to our website at the beginning of this year. In addition to the stylized map that we had on the website, we also added a dynamic map, Google map, that allows people to go online and get a better view from a Google perspective as far as the trail system, the completed sections, the sections that are under development. We also have parking identified there as well. One of our bigger wins for the year was being able to negotiate an arrangement with the Northwinds office park. The property manager there is Samantha Hudson, huge supporter of the foundation and an advocate for us. And she has carved out 12 parking spaces that will be dedicated to Alpha Loop travelers along the Northwind section. We will be unveiling that sometime this month. In addition to carving out the 12 locations, they're also paying for the entire sign package. So we'll have wayfinding signs on West Side Parkway and Northwinds Parkway, directing people to the parking areas. And then within the parking lot itself, we'll have directional signs, and then each of the 12 spots will have an Alpha Loop dedicated parking sign, 4-hour limit there for the parking. There's 12 locations, and they're split into two groups, so they're literally behind 2520 Northwinds Parkway and 2500 Northwinds Parkway. So we're really, really excited about being able to introduce that very soon. This is I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update in regards to the actual trail system itself. I'm sure you know that the Avalon, City Hall to Avalon section was finally completed in the spring of 2020. It was probably the best highlight for that year, given what we were dealing with in COVID. So the final two bridges were built, connecting the Boise section to the Midwick section. And then in June, as I said earlier, June 1st, the Northwind section was completed. And there were sections that were already in place behind Chelsea Walk and Haynes Park, but then there was that huge gap to take you over to Northwind Summit. So the new section was just over a mile that was completed, and the photo on the right is an actual photo. That is not a rendering, and that is a depiction of the 20-foot elevated bridge that's over 360 feet long that meanders through the wetlands. This is one of our probably most talked about and most viewed component of that section of the Alpha Loop. And you can see that there's also a small little overlook there that that was also created for those wonderful Instagram photo type of opportunities. Coming in the, this year and the next several years, there are several projects that the city has funded to help expand the loop. And you're probably familiar with some of them. I know Jack probably is very intimately involved with the one on Roswell Street. But we're very fortunate as a foundation and as residents of a city that our city leaders have allocated significant funding for additional sections of the Alpha Loop. So starting this year and probably for the next couple of years, there are 4 sections that are being called the Alpha Loop Inner Links, that are smaller sections that are being designed and constructed to connect to the larger sections of the Alpha Loop. So there's one on Roswell Street that will connect to DeVore and up to the Maxwell and eventually over to the Atlee. This rendering here that I have on the left is a picture of the link that will be designed and constructed before from taking the Thompson Street section of the Alpha Loop over to the new section. So I don't think the final design plans have been approved yet, but this is a really critical link because currently we really don't have a safe and easy way for people to get from the existing section over to the Chelsea Walk and down to the newer section. So this is getting a lot of attention, excuse me, from our Alpha Loopers. And then also just recently, I think in the last month or so, City Council has reallocated funding to support the North Point Alpha Link component, which will go from Haynes Bridge down to North Point, and that will actually connect the Alpha Loop to the Greenway, which is a significant enhancement there. And I think that construction, design and construction funding, I think totaled over $10 million, and that will be a multi-year project. But that'll be a very important section because one of our most common questions that we're asked at from a foundation perspective is, when will it connect to the Greenway, which is obviously a very successful and well-used trail system. Again, I mentioned that we spent the last year and a half really focused on getting community outreach and fundraising. Here's some photos from our stays at the Farmers Market. We're there the second Saturday of every month, and we will also be participating for the 3rd year in the Christmas markets that are held at Innovation Academy. This year with our Sip and Strolls, we've decided to focus not only just on the downtown section, but also focus on the new section, the Northwind section. So we're thrilled that Village Tavern has agreed to sponsor our 2 Sip and Strolls that we are scheduled to have in the spring and the fall of this year. They have a fabulous patio that will lend itself to a great location for community and meeting, and the Sip and the Stroll should probably be sort of switched up a little bit because Morgan Rogers would not be happy to hear me say this, but we stroll first and then we sip because, as you know, alcohol beverages are not allowed on the loop. But we do a guided tour or a guided running tour on the loop, and then we come back to the actual, to Village Tavern, or in the past it's been Chiringa for community. And it's been a great environment. The excitement and the interest of our residents in regards to the Alpha Loop has just been outstanding, and it's a really great time for community, and we're looking forward to rolling them out in the spring. Actually, we have one coming up at the end of this month. Our volunteers, as I said, we've got 11 board members, and given the number of activities that we've undertaken, we wouldn't have been able to do half of what we've done without a really strong board, a strong group of volunteers. So last year we identified through folks that indicated that they were interested. We had about 17 individuals that were trained to be Alpha Loop volunteers and supported us at the Farmers Market, Sip and Strolls, and especially at our 2 big fundraising events, the June 1st event as well as the Lights on the Loop event. The, let's see, where am I? All right, I'm sorry, am I talking too fast here? No? Okay, good. Moving forward, we are excited about really enhancing the marketing efforts that we've undertaken in the last year and a half. One of our newest board members is Alex Sutton, who is very skilled and has a lot of expertise in marketing and has just recently completed a complete marketing plan for us. So I hope you'll see our marketing efforts becoming a little bit more polished and a little bit more sophisticated as we move out for the 2025 and 2026. If you're not familiar with our website, that far right map there is what we call our stylized map, and this has been on our website. And we have handouts at the farmers market that basically identify all the different destinations and locations on the map. But we will be evolving to something a little bit more sophisticated, and in that inspiration photo to the left of it is what we hope to evolve to in 2025. As I mentioned, we do have a great core group of volunteers, and we will be looking at activating that to a much larger extent. We've got over, I think, 75 folks that have indicated that they're interested in helping out, so we'll be managing orientation sessions and training sessions over the next couple of months. Let's see. I mentioned our community fundraising events. This year, second quarter of 25, we'll be launching our corporate fundraising campaign. So John Goss will be heading up our corporate fundraising activities, and he, along with Andy Christensen on our board and some city partners, will be speaking to some of the large corporations in Alpharetta and looking to secure some fundraising from a corporate perspective. So how can you guys help us, in addition to, other than giving us funding for our lovely website? We would like to ask you, obviously, you're all community stakeholders. You have significant networks in the Alpharetta community and abroad and beyond, so we'd like you to spread the word within your networks, and please reach out to either John or Morgan if you have identify any opportunities that would help us advance our fundraising or our community events. Staying in the loop, we would ask that you check out our website here, our Instagram, sorry. We do a quarterly newsletter, so you can sign up on our website for our quarterly newsletter. Our first farmers market will be April 12th of this month, and our first sip and stroll at Village Tavern will be April 24th. And before I end, again, I'd like to thank Charlotte for the phenomenal job she has done with the Alpha Loop Foundation. She's been invaluable. And I'd like to thank the Development Authority for funding our initial website, and look forward to your questions. Thank you. I have to have questions, come on. No questions?
Are you is the Alpha Loop on all trails yet?
Is what? I'm sorry?
The Alpha Loop on all trails?
Is it on all trails?
Yes.
No, it's a separate system from the Greenway.
No.
I'm sorry.
All trails.
Oh, is it on the All Trails map?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't understand that. Yeah, I don't think we're there. I'm going to ask Charlotte.
Not to my knowledge, so that would be a great next step to increase marketing and awareness.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, it's surprising when you pull up all trails and you see, you want something easy and you want a 2-mile, walk. I mean,
stroll,
like,
right.
It's perfect.
Yep.
And, I mean, like, that creates awareness of everything in the area, so.
Great suggestion, Jack. Thank you. Yeah.
And
Yes?
when you say, that the trail, part of it is, maintaining the trail. Is it the city or is it the foundation that would like service trash cans and things like that?
That's a good question. It's a city responsibility. So my understanding is Morgan Rogers, who's over Parks, Recs, and all trails, his team is responsible for the maintenance of it, which includes the trash pickup. But when I reference, getting involved with maintenance, we see ourselves as being able to organize group events where perhaps we're helping pick up some of the garbage in the stream, because we obviously have a lot of creeks and streams that run through. And this is not an initiative we've actually executed on yet, but it is part of our long-term planning, is to create those type of community outreach events, because I think there's a lot of interest in helping the city with that. But technically, that responsibility falls on Morgan.
All right, I'll go one more.
Okay. 3 for 3.
So, technically then, no part of the loop is open container?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not. And, it's a, truthfully, I think we had 8 sip and strolls over the summer, between the spring, summer, and fall last year. And what we would generally do is we make announcements at the beginning, and we make everybody aware. It hasn't been like a deal breaker, or it really hasn't, in my opinion, it hasn't hampered the experience, because part of what we're doing on the strolls is we're educating people about the history of the loop. We're talking about the public art, so there's a lot of interaction. And then we come back, and that's when we have the community time. And so moving forward with Village Tavern, I see it as sort of happening the same way. The strolls and the runs are more education opportunity to get people familiar with the trail system in the background and the interesting points on the trail, and then the community time is afterwards, and it works well. Not like the Beltline. Yeah. Great. Okay. Any more?
Well, thank you very much for
Sure.
your time. We really appreciate the update. And the one comment that was on there, I moved there for the loop. Moved here.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, because I skipped over that. I will say it was one of those validating moments. We, for the last year and a half, very common, people at the farmer's market, oh my gosh, this is why I'm here, I heard about this and I love it. And I'm sure you probably have seen the residential development that's taken place on the initial section is very busy. And I think at the last count, between what's been approved and what's been built, there's over 600 residential units that are either on the loop or surrounding in the immediate area. And in my conversations with Samantha Hudson from Northwinds, she has cited to me numerous times that from her tenant perspective, that it has been a huge seller for her tenants. In fact, somebody that just closed on a office at the end of the year, she was all excited and started explaining to them, I don't know if you know this, but the Alpha Loop, and he looked at her, he said, why do you think I'm here? That's exactly why I picked this spot. And Saturday, when we saw you at Thrive during our retreat, we had our first orientation for our new trainees. And there are a group of 8 folks there, and each of them went around and explained, told us who they were, where they lived, and why they were interested. And sure enough, one of the couples said, I'm interested because I moved here for the Alpha Loop, and it was just a validation of what we continue to hear. So from an economic perspective, this trail system is significant, really significant, and we're really excited about the possibilities moving forward. Great. Thank you.
One more, Woody, before we have a development update from Charlie.
Good evening. It's great to be here tonight, and just wanted to say thanks for Karen and Karen for coming out and sharing updates on the Alpha Loop and Tech Alpharetta. And really, I'm working on my 5.5-month mark with the city, and really, organizations like both of them really are what make Alpharetta special, and they're great marketing tools for the city and for us in the Economic Development Department. So certainly appreciate all that they do and taking time out to update the Development Authority. Couple quick updates from the Economic Development Department. Starting off with last month, I attended the Site Selectors Guild Conference in Orlando in early March. So that is essentially a group of corporate site selectors that it's an association, but they allow for economic developers to go and network with them a couple times a year. There were over 60, or actually 50 at this one, 50 members there. Probably had the opportunity to talk to at least 35 of them. I've had experience and built relationships with them in the past. It was great to go and reintroduce myself now that I'm with the city of Alpharetta, and have already got some things that have developed out of that. So I have a call tomorrow afternoon with one of the members to just update him on Alpharetta. He's not that familiar. And then we've also received a referral as of Friday of last week from one of them as well. So still more opportunity to do follow-up and continue to kind of beat that Alpharetta drum outside of Alpharetta, which we know how great it is. And part of the goal that we want to do is get out and tell people that haven't experienced Alpharetta, they need to come and check us out. On another marketing front, on advertising, so we partnered with the Greater North Fulton Chamber to do what's called the North Fulton Market Report, which is an insert that's in the Atlanta Business Chronicle. That issue will come out April 18th, and there will be an article on the city of Alpharetta that actually mentions Tech Alpharetta. And Synaptrix is one of the success stories in the city, but it also covers some other accolades from last year, as well as the Morgan Stanley ribbon cutting as well. And then we also placed an ad in there specific to Alpharetta so that we could tell our own story and invite more companies to at least consider moving or expanding here in the city. So again, that will come out April 18th, so I hope you'll be on the lookout for that. And then for the department itself, we just make you aware of some staffing changes and restructuring a bit. So I would like to recognize Charlotte for being promoted to Economic Development Manager. That occurred March 1st. So she's been in that for a month. And really in that role, she's going to take a lead role in managing kind of the day-to-day operations of the Development Authority from administrative function, as well as play a key role in our Business Retention Expansion Program, and then really take a lead on helping us develop more connections and networks around workforce development as well as small business development as well. So really excited for her, and certainly since I've been here, it's been a pleasure and just great to work with her, which I know a lot of folks have had a great opportunity to do that. So just want to recognize her. And then with her, the position that she was in, we actually restructured that a bit to make it pure marketing. So we advertised that position in late February, and under the title of Marketing Coordinator. And what had happened before was, as Charlotte kind of developed into the Economic Development Coordinator role, it turned into a lot of other economic development things other than the marketing. So we've kind of carved that position back out just to focus on marketing again, and have gone through 2 rounds of interviews. Actually had finalist interviews last week, and we're in the final stages of hopefully being able to announce who that person would be. But excited to have some of those changes occurring and getting our team kind of back to full capacity now that we're a separate department again. So the one last thing that I'll mention from the city front, just to make sure it's on your radar, the City Council adopted what's called the North Point Development Framework Plan at its March 25th meeting. So that was a plan that community development developed over the last 8 months with support from a consultant. And essentially what that plan is to kind of cast a vision of what the North Point district could look like 30 years from now. So some of the key findings in that is really encouraging that district, which, as you all know, developed kind of when things were not as walkable and green and more automotive centric. Really, the vision that's being cast is for that district to kind of move more towards a mixed use, walkable, more green district that kind of orients around the natural asset, which is the Big Creek Greenway. So there are no plans right now to enact anything in that plan, but really the goal is to signal to property owners and developers of what could be possible in that district and the types of things that City Council would be kind of interested in entertaining as it redevelops in the future. And with that, I'll conclude my report and answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And finally, Woody's up.
And how much time do we have? I want to be respectful of your time.
We
3 hours?
We're officially scheduled. We can officially schedule till 8. So.
Oh, okay, we won't do that. All right. So.
Yes.
How do we get this started?
It is starting, just press it.
I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, we're not seeing it up here, but
Okay.
it's showing on their screen.
All right, so how do we get back to the beginning? Okay. We want to talk about really one primary structure, which is probably 90% of what you all do with us is property tax driven transactions to promote economic development in the city of Alpharetta. And so we're going to spend the most of our time talking about that, but we want this to be interactive. If you have any questions, if you've been sitting here going, something about these deals, I really want to know, feel free to just interrupt us, raise your hand, however you want to do it. We're then going to talk about transactions in which you serve as a conduit to a private entity who is truly financing with bonds the project. Because the first thing we're going to cover, we issue bonds, but those are not the bonds that are financing the project. Those are bonds that is a legal structure to generate a property tax incentive to drive economic development. Then we'll talk about transactions in which you serve as a conduit. Wellstar is a perfect example. Wellstar is availing themselves of the tax-exempt markets. And then we'll very briefly at the end just mention the third category of deals you all have done, which is transactions where you're partnered up with the city, and the city is very involved. A perfect example of that is the Alpharetta, the Avalon Hotel and Conference Center. That transaction is a perfect example of the city and the Development Authority partnering together, usually with the private sector in some form or fashion, to do a city project that you all can assist with. So that's kind of our framework. So the first is the real personal property tax abatement. This is a discretionary incentive that you all are using to incentivize someone to locate in Alpharetta. Doesn't mean that they're not in Alpharetta now. It can be an expansion of an existing building. We've seen that a lot. A perfect example of these types of transactions, Fiserv, that was a transaction with the state. The state was very involved in that transaction. Morgan Stanley, their expansions, some of the stuff we've done with the office buildings that have been built for the developers that want to do business in Alpharetta. A lot of those transactions involve property tax relief so that they can pass it through to prospective tenants. That's an example there. You know, they're generating a tax base, they're generating jobs, and also capital investment. So it's a way to jumpstart the tax base. Those typically are starting with confidential discussions. They may be with Charlie. It may be someone's called us directly. It may be coming downstream from the mayor or the city manager to Charlie, who's getting in touch with us, or it could start with the state. Some of them are extremely confidential, where we're using code names. Maybe it's a public company and they can't have it public until their investment committee and they've actually gone public with it. We'll use code names, but a lot of times that's not the case. And so if you hear us using a project name, it's probably one of these that involves a public company or something with the state that's a competitive environment that hasn't been publicly announced yet. A lot of the other transactions are, it's a developer, they want to expand North Winds and put another phase in, and they really want help to get things started. So what are the steps? The first step is an inducement resolution. That's when we come to you all. The developer, the private sector is looking for just basically a thumbs up by the development authority that y'all are interested, you're supportive of the project, and you're supportive of providing them with an incentive. That allows them to know that unless something truly happens between inducement resolution and bond resolution, you all have kind of told them you're in. It would be really bad form to come back at a bond resolution and vote it down if you approve the inducement resolution in a setting in which there was a lot of support. Then all of a sudden, what happened for that support to go down? But that inducement resolution is your first official action. Attached to that, there's a letter. They'll detail what their, the structure of the transaction. We detail expectations. They're usually paying for all of the cost in the transaction. They're paying your fee. They're agreeing to do that all up front so that when we get to the documentation, it's pretty much locked in. I'll pause there. Anything so far? Any questions? Let's go to the next one. And I'm going to get you to take this in a minute, but I'm going to keep going. So when I think of things y'all want to think about, and this is just coming from experience. It's not in the law. But when I think of things you can think about, one spectrum is sort of the but-for test. And Mayor Bodker, when he is at the Development Authority of Fulton County, he will look at every applicant and say, I need you on the record to tell me, but for us doing this property tax incentive for you, you would not do the deal. And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes it's no, sometimes it's in between. That's one end of the spectrum, because to me, there's always projects that the answer is, well, no, we might still do it, but there's a lot of compelling reasons why it's going to assist it, right? If it's a developer deal for an office, he's like, I'm doing this, and I want this incentive to fill my building up faster and generate the jobs for you all. I may still do my building. That's an investment decision we would have to make, but I will tell you, if you don't give us the incentive, it's going to make it much harder for me to finance it. If I have this incentive, I can take it to my equity partner, I can take it to our investment committee, and I can take it to my lender, who are all going to look at this as favorable for me to get my deal done. Maybe it's not a but-for test, but that could still be a compelling reason to do it. Or you just have someone who's a corporate citizen looking to grow, and you want them to grow. You think that maybe the incentive for this particular project is marginal, but this will help them continue to grow, and you really think down the road bigger things might be coming. Again, but-for test maybe fails, but there's still compelling reasons to kind of move forward with the transaction. That'll make sense? Yeah. Well, city council and planning will determine if they meet the qualifications to build it. Doesn't mean they can finance it. Your incentive is totally separate than that. And I'm going to flip the question, because the way I would look at it is, maybe before we give an incentive to a project that we've looked at and we're just not sure, maybe we want to talk to the mayor and some of the city council to see if they're supportive of the incentive. They're going to be supportive of the project. They've already approved it. It's probably got the zoning, but then the next step is, are they supportive of a tax incentive for it? Yeah, make sense? Okay. I'm going to let
Woody.
Yeah.
One of my hesitations, and you've witnessed it, is that, when somebody comes to us after the fact, like, if they don't own a property and they want to build something, they come to us and they ask, would you consider this? Rather than, we own the property, we bought this with the intention of developing, and now we want your money. And, that, I'm just sharing, like, how I look at things. And yes, I understand, that the intent may be to fill a space faster or to pass along the benefit to, the tenants. But, along those lines, it's important that the tenants are fully aware that, if their taxes are at 50% right now and they're going to go to 100% over a 10-year period, that they're fully aware of that, instead of having a developer, that hasn't shared that information properly. So,
Yeah. Most of them, right, there's usually a broker involved in finding leasing space. They're asking those kind of questions. Are there situations where tenants may not know that and they have a triple net lease, so they're paying lower taxes that are going to go up? I guess maybe.
Well, you're doing these on bigger projects. It's not,
Right.
A dentist's office or somebody small who might not be. It's mostly sophisticated tenants who are expecting to get a tax abatement in order to rent the space.
And, that does work when it's, a large company like Colonial Pipeline. They kind of knew everything. But when you have, a spec office building, that's completely different because, yes, they're national and regional tenants, but they're not as sophisticated, and they're not the ones that are negotiating up front. They are, ones moving into a project. So, I mean, like, it's just a rhetorical statement. It's not even a question.
Yeah, no,
but-
it's a good statement. I mean, the leasing office of the developer spec office building, right? So they've got their leasing office. They probably brought in a leasing company to help them manage it, and it's not the developer directly. Trust me, they've been given all the information so that when a tenant comes in, they're saying, we have gotten incentives to lower your property taxes for the next 10 years. And they're selling that as part of why you should move into this building instead of one, half a mile away that doesn't have it. These are all great questions. This is exactly, what I think we were hoping to get out of this, is to give you all the tools as you're thinking about it, where to go. But why don't you?
There are more questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So to Woody's point earlier about what a economic development incentives transaction, that property tax abatement, call it a bond deal, right? But it's not really a bond deal. And so I wanted to go through what those differences were compared to, for instance, the Wellstar deal that we're working on right now, which is a real bond deal. So after you've adopted your inducement resolution, that's kind of the political, yes, go ahead, spend a lot of money on lawyers to draft these documents, get your deal together, come back to us, and we approve them. What you're approving typically is a bond resolution. It authorizes the issuance of bonds in a made-up principal amount. That amount we kind of come up with the developer. It's typically tied to their cost of acquisition of the property and then the hard construction costs, the capital improvements that they're going to do. And that's all there is to it, because it's not a real loan, and so they don't actually get any proceeds out of this debt. We just kind of use that as a placeholder because all of these deals are done in reliance on case law. And that's the structure of the first deal that was ever done. So that's kind of why we mimic it always. For purposes of the property tax abatement, the assessor is going to come in and do their typical assessment methods, fair market value assessment methods on the property. That's what the percentage abatement is tied to, not that bond principal amount. Then the other side of the coin is, so you've got the bonds, the other side is the lease structure, right? That's what allows them to enjoy the tax abatement. You own fee title to the property and you lease it back to the company. I'm seeing a lot of nodding, so I'll move quickly. Questions?
No.
Okay.
One point on that is it's great, is because one of the questions you might want to ask in this type of a setting where it's property tax deal, right? They still have to have their financing.
Mhm.
And your bonds are providing them a legal structure for a property tax break, but asking them, have you got this financed yet? If they don't have financing, you might want to say, well, maybe you should come, you're here too early, and let them explain why they're here at the life cycle. A lot of them say, yes, I've got my financing lined up. Or if it's a big public company, they're like, yeah, I've got credit facilities that can pay for this immediately. But understanding and making sure we've got a developer or a development in a project that is financed, legitimate question.
And frequently, I'll see it when we do developer work, getting the tax abatement is a requirement to getting their loan, right? So that is how they get their deal to underwrite. They want to see local government support for the project in the same way, we want to see private support.
Morgan, do you have a?
Do we still make the fees if we approve the abatement and then they adopt it to financing or what have you?
Yeah, great question. You get your fees when the deal closes. So we have to get to closing for the development authority to, and we find times if it doesn't get, they walk away, and then we're kind of looking and saying, well, okay, you're going to pay us for the work we've done even though we didn't get closing, and sometimes that's not the easiest thing in the world.
So, one additional question related to the amounts. So, somebody comes in, $40 million bond deal, but it's not a true bond deal. So, they've got everything, but they've said this is the number. Do you ever look back at the assessment after the fact?
We're not looking back on it. What we're looking at is what the project costs are. Because if we were truly financing it like Wellstar, we would size it based on the project cost. So that's how we come up with the bond principal amount. The assessors aren't looking at financing of the way they're going to assess the project. They're going to go through their normal comps, cost to replace, income capitalization approach, and they're going to do their thing with their commercial appraisers, and they're going to come up with a number. But and that's a starting number, just like any of our homes or anything. The company can still appeal it, if they don't like the assessment.
But what does your gut tell you in terms of correlation? In terms of, if they say it's going to be 40 million, because my thought process when we're looking at these deals is, here's a piece of land. It's got a $5 million assessed value right now. They're coming in and asking for $40 million. So
They've got a $35 million construction budget.
right. Okay. So in my mind, and this is the way I'm thinking, is all right. So it's all in. It's going to be 40 million. It's got an assessed value of 35. It's got an assessed value of 5 million now. So if we do a 50% abatement on $40 million, we're still having an incremental $15 million. So even though we're giving an abatement, we're still coming out net ahead. So we're getting contributions towards services to schools, to things like that. So, I'm just wondering, if there is any correlation in terms of value of that number to the assessment.
I'll tell you, Tom Harris looks every single time because he tracks these. I always have to make sure he knows you're doing
He's
these.
CFO.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's checking to make sure that, because, it matters to the city's tax base.
Right.
Right? So he is looking for that incremental increase. It's never the same number. And I've never actually gone back to look and see, what did they actually spend and what did they get assessed at, because it's all estimates to begin with.
Right.
But I do know he pays attention to make sure that we did get what we were promised.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you did do a study, you would absolutely find your conclusion that
Yeah.
the vast majority of these projects had a really low assessed value. Your incentive gave them a jump start for 10 years. It declined over 10 years. And if you looked at what those assessed values are today, they're going to be much higher.
But my thought is even in year one,
Yep.
we're getting, additional value.
And that's the whole point.
As soon as it's reassessed, once it's complete, it's going to be reassessed. It is going to be at a much higher number than the $5 million dirt. And even if you take the 50% a break in year one, that's assuming it's only gone from 5 to 10 to kind of.
Right.
Yeah, and it's never the case. You're doing projects that are much larger.
Right, okay.
And that's just by way of background, that's the exact same assessment that the Development Authority of Fulton County does, just to see there's a net benefit at the end of the day. And it was worth it to bring these jobs here.
And one of the things we look at carefully is when we are talking to the private sector, and Tom Harris is he got a keen eye on this, is when the developer says, we're going to be placed in service in December of, let's just say 2025. It's great if it actually is in service and you have your CO in December, then year one of the tax abatement starts January 1. Well, if the CO was in January, mid-January, year one is the next year. And so Tom looks at the Board of Assessors and COs and making sure that people aren't trying to squeeze another year. And we look at that, we look
Okay.
at that as well. When we see expected delivery date December, we're like, really? I mean, is that really?
Yeah, very good point. I'm not sure where to go from here.
I would skip
Yeah.
this because
We-
what y'all are
this is-
talking about is exactly what we wanted to do. We could,
This is just to make sure you know what the property tax abatement schedule is. And it's documented, you all enter into a tax memorandum of agreement with the assessors and the developer and yourselves. It's where all of these, that's really where the meat of the abatement is and lays out for them what parcels it applies to. That's always screwed up at the assessors. So,
and you all know the schedule, 50% and 45-40 over the 10-year period. But a lot of, and if that's an Equifax who owns a lot of property around town, or it's a Colonial, they're going to be here, right? If they own property, they're probably going to be here. But if it's a developer-driven deal, spec office building, it's now 100% leased up, he's probably going to sell it. And he's probably going to sell it during that 10-year period, because if he hadn't leased it up in 10 years, he's not doing a good job. And so you see us periodically coming in, and you've got a new buyer who's just stepping in the shoes in year 6, and they want to continue it. So the original developer wants to be done with it. He wants an assignment, assumption, and a release, just relieving him from all liability. The new owner comes in, new tenant to you all. They're stepping into the shoes. They're now assuming all the liability. A lot of times they want us to go back to the Board of Assessors as well to make sure they're on board with it as well. And so you'll see that from time to time coming on. When I think of your thought process there, to me, that's almost a rubber stamp unless they're a bad citizen of some sort. If there's some history or what they were coming in to do and changing operations, you might go, wait a second, it's not what we signed up for. Otherwise, you're not giving anything new. It's just somebody continuing to operate it through the life cycle of the incentive.
this is just our Phantom Bond structure,
Yeah, this is just a picture depicting the structure.
which I think we emailed this to Charlotte, so if you all want to have, she can send you the notes if you don't already have them to look at later. This is real bonds.
One quick question. That's assuming somebody's, built their office building, they're halfway through this, they get foreclosed. Where does that leave this?
That's a great question. And all of our documents have lender protection provisions in them, or you couldn't get it financed. So the lender usually has an option. They can come in and step into the shoes and foreclose on a leasehold deed to secure debt, and the incentive transaction stays in place. Or they may say, I just want fee simple title because I need to get, I don't need this on the bank's balance sheet, and they may just want to collapse it. And they have the option to collapse it, and so does the company. At any time they want to collapse it, they can collapse it. You all will hand them title back, and immediately the next year it's back on the tax rolls 100%.
But they have the option.
They have an option. Yeah, And they're going to think it through if the incentive they think is valuable enough so that when they're looking to either sell it to a third party in a foreclosure setting or to manage it for a while, they may want to keep the incentive alive. And that's an important thing. Any lender that's financing one of those is going to require that option.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move on to the sort of Wellstar, more questions, thoughts, things you've thought about, things you've seen? Anything else on the property tax structures?
I'm sorry.
Now, this is what we're here for.
Yeah.
The questions is by far the best
Yeah.
part of this.
So, right now, that's the only type we've done. So, do we in the state of Georgia have the ability to do like another type?
Deeper incentives beyond the 50%?
Yeah, where, like I've worked on projects in other, municipalities around the country, and, we've done some TIFs and STIFs, so tax increment financing, sales tax increment financing. And, those dollars, were used to essentially pay down bonds. So, we've got a, $400,000 tax, right now taxes are $10,000. Taxes will go to $400,000. The increment is $390,000. That $390 is used to fund, $5 million in bonds, and, it's paid off $390 a year. Do we have that ability to do something like that?
Yes, and there have been discussions over the years on some of the mega projects of looking at it. You have a new North Point plan that's coming out. It would not surprise me at all if that involves some additional economic and public finance aspects that y'all haven't done before. In Georgia, we call them tax allocation districts, but that's TIF financing. Just have to form a TAD, and you can bond against TAD revenue, and we've done that to sort of plant the seeds for big projects.
Okay.
When we did the hotel and conference center, the city was leveraging portions of the hotel motel tax that it's allowed to use for development and promotion. And so there were some portions of that we were allowed to use to back those bonds. And that's just an example.
So we can get creative for the right opportunity.
You can. It's sort of the right for you to go outside the box that you've always been on. It's probably got to be the right opportunity.
Right.
Something transformative.
But we're not just, that's not the only thing
That's
that's
right.
available.
Correct.
Okay.
It's your bread and butter.
And look, I mean, there are structures that go beyond the leasehold structure we use with Fulton County Board of Assessors, and it's called a usufruct, and a usufruct has no real property interest. So there are no property taxes paid. And we've done those transactions around the state for certain projects, and then you typically are negotiating a pilot payment because they don't pay any taxes. So you're negotiating what that pilot payment's going to look. Payment in lieu of taxes. And is that going to go straight to the development authority? Is the development authority going to take the pilot payment and split it up with sort of the taxing authorities that would have gotten the leasehold taxes? And you all have never done one of those transactions. They're harder to do from a legal perspective. They're a little more, they have a lot more eyes on it because you're taking something 100% off the tax rolls. But that's a tool that some development authorities use. What else? Yeah. The 50% ramp up is specific to Fulton County. As you go further away from Atlanta, they're more aggressive, and they want projects, and they may be in a depressed county. 159 counties in Georgia, and so they may be willing to do much deeper cuts.
Yeah, maybe give up property taxes completely just to get the jobs, the different motivations. But here in Fulton, when you do a leasehold valuation, we are stuck with that 50%
That's under the
constitutional
Georgia
prohibition.
Constitution, because you have to, the two prongs of the Georgia Constitution is fair market value of assessed value, and also uniformity amongst taxpayers. So any taxpayer under any development authority lease in Fulton County needs to be treated uniformly, and thus we all use the 10-year ramp up, and we don't change the numbers, because if you change the numbers, and all of a sudden you're suspect to a legal challenge.
Okay.
No one wants to have legal challenges in this.
Thank
The
you.
Although we-
assessors wouldn't agree to it.
Trying to think what else.
I think that's, yeah, CID, I guess.
And then the other type of transactions are just revenue bond financings where you're a conduit. You've done that a couple times. One was for a multifamily project. I can't remember the original name of that.
There was Park Alpharetta, which is a seniors housing. I don't know if it's still seniors. And then there was a regular multifamily project. I forget the name
Well,
of it.
the one that's sort of in limbo right now is Dogwood. Y'all provided an inducement for that one. They're looking at whether or not they can, right now that property is exempt from property taxes because it's a 501c3 that owns it. They're trying to figure out how to pencil out their operating expenses and their numbers and their financing to make it work with just the Fulton County incentive, the 50%. And so we'll see they may be coming back and asking for other things. But those are examples. So you're providing a conduit because state and federal law allows certain do-good projects to use tax-exempt financing, which in some markets, the spread between taxable and tax-exempt rates is not much. It can get, when rates are really compressed and low, it may only be 40 basis points. But now we're in a really high interest rate environment, and it can very easily be over 100 basis points. So they can save the difference between 5% loan and a 6% loan on a $100 million project. That's a lot of money. And so the federal government has said, we think these types of projects can utilize tax-exempt financing. Forget property taxes. This is purely the interest rate on the loan they pay is tax-exempt to the holder of the loan. So whether it's a bank or bondholders, they now don't have to pay taxes on the interest, so they're willing to give you a lower interest rate. And so we see those projects a lot, and the types of projects the feds have allowed to do that. And this slide sort of shows you how that structure is multifamily housing can do it for as long as it's got an affordable component to it. And that's 20% of the units set aside at 50% of the area median income, or 40% of the units set aside at 60% of the area median income. And so we see a lot of those transactions around the state. We've done some with you all. Others are 501c3s. Any 501c3 entity can finance its capital costs with tax-exempt bonds. So that's healthcare systems, that's national, Boys and Girls Club headquarters, American Cancer Society headquarters.
Private K-12 schools.
Private K-12 schools, we do a lot of that. Other ones that we used to do a long time ago, we just don't do them anymore because they're too small, they're called small manufacturing facilities, but there's like a $20 million limit, which hadn't been changed in a long time. Those can be done with tax-exempt bonds. Solid waste disposal facilities can be done with tax-exempt bonds. The only ones I think we've seen with you all are the 501c3s or multifamily housing. I don't think we've seen any.
Hospital.
Yeah, hospital, yes.
I mean, I just think of them differently because they're the big 501c3s.
Yeah.
They can get pretty small.
The hospital systems that are the nonprofit hospital systems finance all their major capital with tax-exempt bonds, and that's what Wellstar is doing now. This is a chart that just shows you the structure of the borrower, note, loan agreement, property, how the structures work. So what I like to have about this chart sort of toward the end is this is basically the structure that all development authorities used for all transactions up until about the late 1970s. And some creative public finance lawyers said, Georgia is losing out because we don't have the ability to grant property tax breaks that our neighbors do. what if instead of having this loan agreement on the chart and the note, everything is the same, but the borrower transfers title to the development authority. There's a lease agreement. They still pay rental payments equal to the debt service on the bonds that we've been doing these transactions for Wellstar and Dogwood. And now let's go to the tax assessors and say, hey, they shouldn't pay full property taxes because the development authority owns title. They have a leasehold estate. That's how all of these property tax transactions developed. And it went through this court system, went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court blessed it. And so now we have a legal framework to do the property tax breaks. But this is just a chart showing you how it works with either bondholders or, or a bank in that dark blue as the lender in the deal.
One thing I wanted to make sure, you still get the same 1/8 of 1% fee here when you do these conduit bond deals, but you're not giving up any property tax revenues, except if it's a nonprofit, they don't pay taxes anyways. The difference would be that housing deals, multifamily housing deals will actually pay you that annually. So that's a good source of revenue for you as they, as the project lives on.
Yeah, and the law is on a true conduit financing deal for like Wellstar or Dogwood, that you're limited to charging the development authority a profit of 1/8 of 1% annually. The market in Georgia has just developed that on economic development deals for the property tax breaks, everyone almost uniformly charges the 1/8 of 1% one time at closing. Some charge a really small administrative fee on an annual basis. Like, I think it's the cab charges, is it 4 basis points?
A lot of small counties, because it helps pay for staff that are monitoring.
So they do charge a smaller annual fee. But the market on multifamily transactions, and they're just used to it, is they're used to paying 1/8 of 1% annually. So when we did your first multifamily deal, that's where we started at, and imagine that, the board was happy with it. That's a good distinction there.
One question. I've never been clear, if we're the conduit, the trustee, in the beginning of this transaction, do we remain in that position throughout the life of the project?
Yes. Okay. And the work that a conduit trustee does on the Wellstar Dogwood deals is very different from a property tax-driven deal. Because in a property tax-driven deal, you're not seeing money move to pay debt service because the obligor on the lease is the company who would be paying rental payment equal to the debt service on the bonds, but they own the bonds. And so you don't pay yourself, so there's not that trustee serving in that role, but they are in the deal, and they're on the deal for the life of the deal, but they're actually collecting and paying principal and interest for the Wellstar type transaction.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? And then we mentioned just the last type of deal. I mean, we don't have a chart about it, but it's just when the city is very involved and they're looking for creative ways to finance projects that they have. There's some of those can be done through the development authority, and we've done them in the past. And
don't use it all that often.
Don't use it that often, but it's great. And that's typically where the city, which has a AAA rating, you all are issuing bonds to finance some component of a city capital project. And they enter into an intergovernmental contract with the development authority, agreeing to pay contract payments that equal the debt service on the bonds. Thus, from the market's perspective, those bonds are AAA. They're not City of Alpharetta general obligation bonds. They're development authority AAA obligation because the debt service is guaranteed by the city through that contract. And so there we get those rated. We go to Moody's and S&P. We get the AAA rating, and we're able to do a transaction like the Conference Center deal, where the Conference Center was financed through Development Authority of Alpharetta bonds backed by the city, and then everything else, the rest of the hotel, was financed by the private sector, by the hotel owner-operator.
Those are really limited, though, because you only have the power to do sort of private projects, and the city really does public projects, so the overlap isn't as often as we've looked at doing public facilities authorities in the past.
Yeah, we have. But Other things, we see some development authorities doing parking deck deals, where, the smaller city may have a need for a parking deck downtown. We did this one here, not through the development authority. Y'all's parking deck was done through general obligation bonds that the city and the voters approved. But there's some transactions where the city's desperately looking for parking, and so there's some kind of a public-private partnership with a development authority involved in a city maybe to pay for it. You just get a private parking operator, and that allows the development authority to do it.
You very generously leave your parking free, so we appreciate that.
There's something going on tonight downtown. I don't know what, but I had to park on the top floor. I've never had that before. Other questions?
Is there anything we can proactively do? Like, I know we support Alpha Loop and Tech Alpharetta, but if we have, this funding from fees, can we purchase property or, I guess, be more opportunistic or proactive?
You absolutely can, and we see in large urban areas where development authorities have done a ton of deals, and maybe they've done a ton of transactions where they're getting annual revenue. They may be doing small business grants, they may be doing all kinds of things to promote economic development, and you're doing some of that. I mean, the way you utilize with some of the partners you saw today, you're able to use these fees for anything to promote your public purposes of increasing trade, commerce, business and employment. Which is a pretty broad, the courts have been very broad. And in fact, I'll end on this, the Development Authority's law was amended. It's probably been about 15 years to put a new catch-all project because some people had challenged some projects that didn't fit perfectly in any of the categories. So the General Assembly and the governor enacted a new project, which is very broad. It's basically a catch-all.
Morgan, we had done that inducement on North Point. It was, 500 million. You think, what's that mean? And $625,000 would have been, the number had that gone through. That would have given us, the ability to do a lot. But, our other, $100 million, $200 million deals, it's just a small percentage of that. Well, thank you very much.
Was this helpful? I mean, I hope it
Very.
was. Okay, good.
Very.
Thank y'all. We're here anytime you need us. You know where to find us.
Well, on that note, unless anybody has anything else that needs to be brought up, all right, then we'll see each other again in May. Thank you.